How ISIS changed Iraqi schools. After 2 years in the darkness, living in the shadow of ISIS, children in northern Iraq are finally getting a chance to learn again. Schools are starting to reopen as Iraqi forces push back the terror group, and more might be opening soon after Iraq claimed victory this week in Mosul, Iraq's second-largest city and ISIS' last major stronghold in the country. But war is not finished with the last bullet or when they are raising the flag, warns Diego Ibarra Sanchez, a Spanish photographer who has been documenting the country's educational crisis. Much work remains to rebuild and restore what has been lost. ISIS, in a couple of years, wiped out years and years of investment, Ibarra Sanchez said. His photos show the devastation. Schools abandoned and heavily damaged. Libraries destroyed. Thousands of books and manuscripts burnt. ISIS used many schools as headquarters for their fighters, but in others they continued to teach young children, albeit with a much different curriculum. Instead of subjects such as history and geography, students were taught religious extremism and violence. A math textbook, for example, asked students in one exercise to calculate the number of unbelievers who could be killed by a car bomber. Another referenced how many explosives a factory could produce. All plus signs were removed because they resemble the Christian cross. Parents were quite afraid of sending their kids to the ISIS schools, Ibarra Sanchez said. Sometimes they were forced to. And it wasn't just the children. I met one teacher, 51 years old. She was forced to impart the lessons during the regime because ISIS was telling her, if you are not giving the lessons, we are going to kill you, he said. So she was forced to go to the school and to teach. Now she's quite happy because she's in East Mosul in a school that is open again. UNICEF and other non-governmental organizations are helping to rebuild schools and make sure children have whatever they need to succeed. Earlier this year, UNICEF estimated that 1 of every 5 schools in the country were out of use. One big problem, Ibarra Sanchez said, is that many of the buildings are full of booby traps set by ISIS. The schools have to be carefully cleared by specialists before lessons can resume. Even when schools restart, students still face an uphill climb. Many are now 2 years behind on their studies, and there's a lot of ground to make up. Ibarra Sanchez fears that this could become a lost generation, but he was impressed by the children's resilience and their eagerness to learn. They don't deserve to grow up without a childhood as we understand childhood, he said. That right to play, that right to learn, that right to share without being afraid that someone is coming to your house or you cannot go to school. Although he has seen many improvements since an August visit last year, more equipment and more teachers are still needed for the schools, Ibarra Sanchez said. And the ISIS threat continues to loom in some areas. Life is starting again, he said, but there is a long way, a long path after a bloody war.